Jenna Ortega, the breakout star who has transitioned from Disney Channel darling to Netflix phenomenon, has become a defining face of her generation. With her darkly magnetic portrayal of Wednesday Addams in the Tim Burton-directed Wednesday series, Ortega cemented her status as more than just a rising star. She became a cultural icon for Gen Z, praised for her sharp intellect, emotional depth, and unmistakable screen presence. But with such a meteoric rise comes a darker side of fame: relentless public scrutiny and, at times, utterly baseless speculation. Recently, Ortega found herself caught in an internet-fueled rumor that seemed as unlikely as it was unsettling. Gossip blogs began whispering about a supposed romantic link between Ortega and Hollywood veteran Johnny Depp, a man nearly 40 years her senior. The rumor, devoid of any credible foundation, quickly spiraled into an online frenzy. One unverifiable Instagram post claiming the two had been spotted together was all it took to ignite a digital wildfire. Despite lacking photos, reliable sources, or any semblance of credibility, the sheer novelty and controversy of such a pairing drew immediate attention. Social media platforms lit up. Reddit threads dissected the timeline. Twitter users speculated whether Depp had been secretly cast in the second season of Wednesday. TikTok montages featured imagined scenarios, complete with dramatic music and overanalyzed body language from old interviews that, in reality, had no connection at all. But more disturbing than the reach of the rumor was the willingness of so many to accept or even amplify it. The alleged relationship between a 61-year-old actor and a 21-year-old actress triggered reactions ranging from disbelief and disgust to morbid curiosity. Amid the rising storm, Jenna Ortega did not hesitate to respond. Taking to her Instagram stories, she posted a blunt, unambiguous statement. "This is so ridiculous I can't even laugh. I have never met or worked with Johnny Depp in my life. Please stop spreading lies and leave us alone." Her tone was unmistakably exasperated, firm, mature, and direct. There was no hedging, no softening the blow. In a single sentence, she shattered the myth and exposed just how absurd the gossip had become. Fans applauded her for her candor. In a space often filled with vague PR statements, Ortega's refusal to play the game showed a confidence and self-respect. Beyond her years, Johnny Depp's team followed shortly after with their own rebuttal. Through a spokesperson, the actor denied ever having met Ortega and dismissed the story as completely untrue and malicious. The statement underscored the seriousness with which Depp viewed the rumor, not just as falsehood, but as a deliberate act of defamation. For an actor whose personal life has been dissected in the harshest of lights, the last thing he needed was to be dragged into a bizarre and potentially damaging new narrative. Since winning his defamation suit against ex-wife Amber Heard in 2022, Depp has been cautiously rebuilding his public image, largely focusing on music, European cinema, and steering clear of controversy. This, for him, was an unwelcome and wholly fabricated step backward. The speed at which the rumor was born, spread, and dismantled says a lot about today's digital media environment. In a pre-social media world, a story like this might have never made it past a tabloid editor's desk. Today, all it takes is one speculative post or anonymous tip to make headlines. The line between fact and fiction is dangerously thin, and gossip, no matter how outrageous, has become a currency. People engage, share, react, and debate before ever asking, "Is this even true?" For Ortega, the timing of the incident couldn't have been worse. Fresh off the success of Wednesday and balancing a growing list of film projects, the young actress is navigating the tricky space between rising fame and sustained credibility. Unlike many of her Disney Channel predecessors, Ortega has consciously carved out a space that prioritizes serious acting, boundary-pushing roles, and advocacy on issues she cares about, particularly mental health and representation. To have her name suddenly linked with one of Hollywood's most controversial figures, without her consent and without any basis in truth, was a deeply unfair intrusion. Public reaction was swift, and it revealed much about the broader cultural climate. While many fans instantly recognized the rumor as false, others used it as a springboard for deeper conversations about age, power dynamics, and exploitation in Hollywood. What would it mean if the rumor were true? What precedent would it set? For young actresses just finding their footing? In an era still grappling with the aftershocks of the Me Too movement, allegations, real or imagined, carry enormous weight. This wasn't just idle chatter. It was a potential PR nightmare that could have shifted how both actors were perceived. Fortunately, the truth was swift and definitive. For Depp, the rumor echoed a pattern he's likely all too familiar with. Once one of Hollywood's most beloved and bankable stars, his reputation took a severe blow following years of legal battles and disturbing revelations about his personal life. Although the court ruled in his favor in his defamation case, the scars remain, and public opinion remains divided. That a false rumor involving him could take off so quickly, even in 2025, speaks to the precariousness of his public image. For Depp, the fastest way to squash this scandal was also the simplest: deny it, directly and immediately. At its core, this episode was not about romance or intrigue. It was about control. Both Ortega and Depp were turned into characters in someone else's narrative. They were robbed of agency and cast in a story that didn't exist. For celebrities today, that loss of control over one's image is the price of doing business. But Ortega's refusal to play along reminded everyone, fans, tabloids, and trolls alike, that she won't be a passive participant in her own fame. Her fans stood by her, not just out of loyalty, but because her reaction resonated. For young women navigating an industry rife with double standards and invasive attention, Ortega's clear boundary setting was a form of quiet empowerment. It said, "I will not allow others to define me." Her focus remains on the work, on building a career defined by talent, not scandal. And in an age where so many young stars fall victim to sensationalism, Ortega's grounded approach is refreshing. Meanwhile, Depp's response, through official channels rather than personal platforms, was more reserved but no less firm. For an actor seeking to transition from controversy into legacy, avoiding entanglements like this is crucial. His team knew that allowing the rumor to linger could reopen old wounds, stoke tabloid fires, and cast a shadow over the more measured life he's trying to build. Whether consciously or not, Depp's silence beyond the statement also signaled a shift. The Johnny Depp of now is not interested in the circus. In the end, what began as a baseless rumor became a reflection of much bigger issues: celebrity culture, the velocity of misinformation, and the public's appetite for scandal over substance. But it also became a rare case study in how stars can take back the narrative. Jenna Ortega and Johnny Depp both shut it down, not with dramatics, but with clarity. As this bizarre story fades from memory, its implications linger. In the digital age, truth often struggles to catch up with fiction. But when it does, it cuts through the noise with a clarity that's hard to ignore. Ortega's voice, strong and self-assured, reminded everyone why she's more than just a trending name. She's a force. And Depp, whether rebuilding or retreating, showed that some battles aren't worth fighting, because the truth, when plainly stated, needs no defense. Ultimately, this wasn't a story about a relationship. It was a story about how fame warps perception, how the public imposes their narratives onto real people, and how misinformation, even when born from nothing, can rapidly take on a life of its own. In an era when a single social media post can spark international speculation, the surreal tale of Jenna Ortega and Johnny Depp's imagined romance exemplifies the ways in which celebrities often lose control over their own narratives. It's no longer enough to simply live one's life in the public eye. In today's media landscape, public figures are required to constantly assert their reality against the myths others create around them. Jenna Ortega's experience, especially, underscores how fragile the boundary between truth and fiction has become. At just 21, she is navigating a level of fame that, in previous generations, might have taken years, if not decades, to achieve. Thanks to streaming platforms and a hyper-connected online world, Ortega's rise was meteoric. But that rapid ascent comes with a cost: being watched, analyzed, and discussed relentlessly. What this rumor did was strip away her agency, placing her into a sensationalized narrative she never asked to be a part of. In the public imagination, she was no longer just Jenna Ortega the actress. She was a character in a speculative, baseless tabloid drama. The nature of this particular rumor was also telling, that it involved a man nearly 40 years her senior, one with a polarizing history, only intensified its impact. Some saw it as scandalous, others as exploitative, but regardless of how people reacted, they reacted quickly and loudly. And that says a great deal about our current cultural climate. There was no initial pause for fact-checking, no moment to question the authenticity of the claims. Instead, users on social media platforms took the rumor at face value, debating its implications, drawing connections that didn't exist, and fueling an entirely fictitious situation. What made the situation even more frustrating for Ortega and Depp was the complete lack of foundation. This wasn't a misinterpreted photograph or an ambiguous public interaction. It was quite literally made up, with no supporting evidence whatsoever. And yet, the sheer force of celebrity culture propelled the lie forward. The internet is saturated with content-hungry users who thrive on drama, and when an unexpected pairing like this emerges, even without proof, it offers a tantalizing storyline. This speaks to a broader societal issue: our increasing willingness to believe and spread misinformation simply because it entertains or surprises us. Jenna Ortega's decision to respond directly and without pretense was more than just damage control. It was a declaration of personal boundaries. In her short but potent message, she not only dispelled the rumor, but also made clear that her life and reputation are not for public manipulation. Her response reflected the frustrations of a young woman who is growing her career with intention, only to be blindsided by an invasive and fictitious headline. Her words, stripped of any publicist's polish, felt authentic, and that authenticity resonated deeply with her fans. They recognized the injustice of the moment and rallied behind her not just out of loyalty, but out of empathy. Johnny Depp's side of the response, while more formal, was equally decisive. Through his spokesperson, he condemned the rumor not just as false, but as malicious. It was a strong word, malicious, but a necessary one, considering the circumstances. Depp has spent years fighting for his reputation, with every legal battle and public misstep dissected in minute detail. For him, a false rumor, especially one involving a much younger actress, threatened to reopen wounds that were only just beginning to heal. The firm denial suggested that both he and his team are keenly aware of how fragile public perception can be, and how important it is to shut down misinformation before it can take root. Together, the responses from Ortega and Depp illustrated the different ways celebrities handle crises in the digital age. Ortega took to social media, leveraging the directness of her platform to connect with her audience. Depp, a veteran of many public controversies, relied on a spokesperson to maintain a degree of formality and distance. But the message in both cases was the same: this isn't true, and it needs to stop. And in that moment, the truth did something important. It pierced through the noise. Beyond just celebrity gossip, the incident also shines a light on the role that fans and media consumers play in perpetuating harmful narratives. The people who engage with this content by liking, commenting, sharing, often forget that there are real individuals behind the headlines. The rapid spread of the rumor about Ortega and Depp wasn't just the work of tabloids or anonymous accounts. It was a collective act, driven by curiosity, sensationalism, and in some cases, a disregard for boundaries. The internet's short attention span doesn't excuse the damage done in the moment. There's an irony here, too. Both Ortega and Depp are artists, dedicated to storytelling. They make their living creating fictional worlds, breathing life into characters and moving audiences. But when the stories crafted about them off-screen become more dramatic than the ones they act in, it creates a dangerous imbalance. The fantasy overtakes the reality. This is the paradox of fame. The more successful you become at pretending on screen, the more likely the public is to imagine who you are off-screen. As Jenna Ortega's star continues to rise, and as Johnny Depp seeks stability after years of turbulence, both are learning that in a world desperate for spectacle, truth is often an afterthought. But they also understand the power of reclaiming their own voices. It's not always easy. It's not always fair, but it's necessary. Because the alternative, allowing others to write your story for you, is unacceptable. This rumor, though short-lived, served as a case study in the volatility of modern celebrity. It proved that no matter how successful, no matter how private, no one is immune to being pulled into the whirlwind of gossip. And it also proved that the most potent weapon against that chaos is honesty, delivered swiftly, clearly, and without apology. As the media cycle moves on to its next fixation, Ortega and Depp can take solace in the fact that they responded not with outrage or indulgence, but with clarity, they reminded the world that being a celebrity does not mean being public property. And perhaps, just perhaps, they taught a few people to be a little more cautious about what they choose to believe.